Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
And I'm Sarah Frazier, Senior Vice President and General Manager of CBS Radio Houston.
Our next interview is with Sylvester Turner. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you here.
It's good to be here.
And we want to start out with the first question, which is, why should Sylvester Turner be mayor of Houston, Texas?
Well, look, this is home. I am the same kid that graduated from Klein High School and took the bus downtown to go to University of Houston. You know, I got off behind Foley's, for those who remember when Foley's was downtown, and then walked over to Sackwitz when Sackwitz was in business, and took the bus to University of Houston, went there, graduated from University of Houston in my final year, worked at Southwestern Bell, which is now AT&T downtown, and then on to law school and then back. So this city's been good. The business that I own, I'm a partner. Barnes & Turner has been in the downtown area for 32 years. The title company, which I own, has been downtown for 18. And I've been in the legislature now for 26 years. So I have benefited, inspired by the work of previous Houstonians who built this city. Huge vision. Houstonians dream big and we make big things happen. Well, we need to create that same sort of legacy for those kids yet to come, for those kids who are here, for those kids that are going through, to motivate them, to encourage them, and we need to build a city with them in mind. That's what I want to do, and hopefully the people in the city will give me the opportunity to serve them as their mayor.
Speaking of the people of the city, we have a severe problem with voter apathy.
Yes.
Not many people turning out.
Yes.
What do you think that you can do about that in this election, specifically with millennials and the Latino vote?
Well, number one, the major thing is to speak to the issues that impact people's lives. You know, people will vote if they care and if they feel as though that you care about their concerns. So with 24% of the people in the city being working poor, they're working every day, but they're still having a hard time making it. They want to know that those who are at City Hall care for them and will speak to them. That's critically important. There are a lot of people who are interested in being business owners, you know, like myself, and they want to feel as though that the people at City Hall sees them, hears them, and will make sure the business is accessible for them, that they are included in a real way. For people, for example, in the Latino community, it's a growing, as the Chamber would say, the fastest growing majority in the city of Houston. I think people want to feel as though when you look at the city of Houston, it's reflective of the diversity within this city. And that's critically important. So I think if you want to get people to vote, to participate, millennials, you have to include them. I'm very proud. My campaign manager, for example, is 27 years old. The person over my policy director, she's 32. When you look at my internship program, I don't think there's any other candidate who has an internship program of millennials that's more than 200, you know. And when you see them, and I talk to them, they represent the city of Houston in all of its diversity, in terms of ethnicity, faith, their backgrounds. They come from all over, not just the country, they literally come from all over the world. So I think if we want to include people and get them to vote, you have to go where they are. I may not be Hispanic, but I think my DNA is good. And I think when you look at what I fought for, education, neighborhood development, but with the community and its culture still intact. People want the improvements, they don't want to be displaced. Healthcare, access to healthcare, my record is clear. When you talk about economic empowerment and being totally inclusive, and not just tokenism, so to speak, my record speaks to that. And so I'm very proud of the record that I've established, but that's yesterday. The question is, where do we go from here? And I want to build a city where we go from point A, point B, where you see a city that's representative of that diversity, and that diversity is reflected within the workforce and those who are receiving the economic opportunities from this city. I think if I can convey that message, and people feel at the end of the day that it's coming from my heart and not just coming from my lips, then I think people will show up at the polls and hopefully they'll cast a positive vote for me.
Thank you.
Well, certainly on the minds of so many people, pension reform and revenue caps. Where do you stand on those two issues?
Well, I think, number one, you can't talk about pension reform and revenue cap without talking about the entire financial portfolio of the city. For example, the revenue cap I think works contrary to a growing, vibrant, dynamic city. If you want to, when Bill White was mayor, we put the revenue cap in 2004. In 2006, he added another $1 million on top of that for public safety. And that was because he recognized that when you have police officers and firefighters, you have to have the revenue in order to make sure that you have a force that protects the security of your citizenry. And so what I would do, if you want to keep the revenue cap in place, I think we need to modify it either for public safety or to pay down the city's debt. That leads to the pension. Right now you have an unfunded liability of $3.2 billion. It needs to be addressed. But the financial problems of the city are not just based on pensions. You have to look at the entire financial portfolio. But even if you just stay on pensions, whoever is going to be the next mayor, and I hope that's me, will have to deal with that issue with a great deal of diplomacy and finesse. And the reason why I say that, we have 5,300 police officers in the city. The number has been stagnant over the last 10 years. But roughly 1,900 of your police officers are eligible to retire right now. You have a little less than 4,000 firefighters, but 1,400 of your firefighters are eligible to retire right now. If you don't handle this situation with some diplomacy and finesse and bring everybody to the table, what do you think happens if you start talking about radically changing someone's pension when they have been an employee of the city for 20, 25, or 30 years? They cash in and they leave. And you not only have a pension issue, now you have a public safety issue. So I think the best way to deal with that, everything has to be on the table. Every single thing, every pot of money has to be on the table. And then you have to bring people together and say, look, this is our city. It's important for the city to be financially healthy, and everyone has to participate in the financial sacrifice as well as the financial prosperity of the city. But no one group, we shouldn't have to try to balance the books of the city of Houston on the backs of any one group. So, and then the pension problem was created not just because of the benefits, but for a long period of time, the people at the city of Houston underfunded their annual pension contributions. And when you borrow from the pensions to do other things, you create an unfunded liability. The last thing I will say is that there's only one candidate that has taken an unfunded pension plan and made it actuarially sound. The Employee Retirement System, ERS, 200,000 employees, an unfunded liability of $7.5 billion, costing the people of the state of Texas $500 million a year. A few months ago, the governor, Greg Abbott, signed HB 9, House Bill 9, which makes that system actuarially sound. There are three people who are the authors of that bill. John Otto, the chairman of Appropriations, Dan Flynn, the chairman of Pensions, and yours truly, Sylvester Turner. And what we did, we made some design changes. Employees are having to pay more. States having to pay more. We made that system actuarially sound. It's no longer costing the people of the state of Texas $500 million a year. The rating agencies have now given the state of Texas a thumbs up, and we now can move forward together. Well, the same sort of diplomacy will have to take place right here locally with the city of Houston, so we can address it. And then the other thing I think people should bear in mind, it is true that the statute has to be amended in the legislature when you're talking about pension reform.
Yes.
But bear in mind, the legislature will not meet again until January 2017. And so the earliest you can address that issue, that something can come out, is September 1st of 2017. In the meantime, the next mayor who takes office in January of 2016 has to balance the city's budget in 2016, has to balance the city's budget in 2017, without the pension issue having been resolved in that time frame. The good news for me, I've been on the Appropriations Committee for 21 of my 26 years. I'm vice chair of the Appropriations Committee. I've been on the committee that actually balances and writes the state's budget since 2003. In fact, the only Democrat, with the exception of 2009, at the table, one of the five from the Texas House, actually writing a $200 billion plus budget. So I feel very comfortable in addressing the issue. The issues are real: revenue cap, pensions, and there's a third element, and that's the debt. The debt will peak in 2018 in the city of Houston. It will rise up to about $360 million. But all of it can be managed. It can be managed. And I've already been talking with the finance director of the city of Houston. I have several conversations with him. And basically what I've said, if given the opportunity to be the mayor of the city of Houston, I want to be prepared to hit the ground running on day one. I feel comfortable about it. Financial management is my area of forte. And I would recommend anyone to talk with people in Austin, Republicans and Democrats alike, and get their assessment of what sort of budget leader I have been in my last 21 years.
Very well.
The Rice Kinder Institute and Dr.
Yes.
Kleinberg just published their annual survey, and for the first time, infrastructure and traffic surpassed crime as the #1 concern. So what are your plans for infrastructure and to fix the potholes?
And everyone has hit at least half a dozen of those, if not more.
Absolutely.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I rolled out Road to the Future program. And essentially what it does is that it, recognizing that there are potholes all over the place and we need to get that fixed, the county has a 24-hour road repair maintenance program. It doesn't make any sense why the city of Houston, the 4th largest city in the country, doesn't have a similar 24-hour road repair maintenance program. I want to institute that very quickly. At the same time, what I've advocated in the program that I've laid out is that we work with the Houston Community College, San Jacinto, Lone Star Community College, the Texas Department of Transportation with funding, and provide what I call short-term training programs for people who are unemployed or unskilled on road maintenance, repair, and transportation construction. And then partner or match those students who are leaving your community colleges with the private sector. Just today, for example, I had a conversation with a private contractor who saw my Road to the Future program, very excited about it, and anxious to be a part of it and to take employees, to take people who are coming out of these programs, workforce development program, and hiring them, paying them good wages, and being a part of this 24-hour road repair maintenance program. You achieve two things. You get the potholes fixed in real time, okay? And number two, you address your income inequality in this city. For people who are unemployed, unskilled, okay? For people who are not going to be in a college, go to a 4-year institution, but let's say they're looking to graduate from high school, or they're out there unemployed and they want to be able to take care of their families right now. You provide them with the skills that they need in a workforce development program, match them with the private sector, okay? You bring the private sector in and you institute a 24-hour road maintenance program that addresses your short-term infrastructure needs as we work on the long-term. Now, on infrastructure, I support the concept of Rebuild Houston. Now, that's facing some court challenges, but I think this is an opportunity to take that concept and make it even better, because you cannot address in a sustainable way your infrastructure without a reliable, dependable funding source. You have to have a reliable, dependable funding source. And so I want to make that rebuild program better. It needs to be a dedicated account used for dedicated purposes. It needs to be transparent. You shouldn't be paying other employees from monies coming for your street and drainage. But I want to maintain that funding source. But it's important for the people of the city of Houston that they believe that we're managing all of their dollars extremely well before they'll sign off with maintaining that mechanism. So you have to deal with the revenue cap, you have to deal with the unfunded pension liabilities, you have to deal with all these other pots of monies that are out there. But for infrastructure, which is critically important, you have to have a reliable funding source. You can't borrow it because we're already clustering a lot of our debt, and that's going to spike in 2018. So borrowing the money is not the answer, but having a reliable, dependable funding source is. And so that addresses your potholes, that addresses your infrastructure, because you can't have a growing, vibrant city when the infrastructure is old and falling apart.
Well, and with so many people coming to Houston, it's a great place to live, and they want to be sure that they can get from one point to another. So critically important. also across the country, we know that there have been many challenges with law enforcement
Yes.
and working in the community.
Yes.
What would your plan be for Houston moving forward?
In terms of law enforcement?
Law enforcement and making sure that Houston doesn't see some of those challenges that we've seen across the country.
Well, let me say, potentially any city can be, for example, a Baltimore or Ferguson,
Sure,
or
right.
potentially. And what ends up happening is that when there are areas of your city that people have lost hope, or they feel as though they're not seen and they're not heard, just one flashpoint can create a major fire.
Yes.
So
and we've seen that over and over.
So one of the things that you have to do, you have to get in there and address those areas before the flashpoint occurs. Okay? In many of the communities that we're talking about, and many times we're dealing with communities that feel like they're disenfranchised or excluded, or there's high unemployment, many of their, let's say, minority neighborhoods. These areas have been systematically ignored. And so I think it's important to get in there to show improvements in those communities. People who want to live in their neighborhoods, they want to maintain their culture, their identity, they want the improvements, but they don't want to be displaced. And so I think it's important to get in there where they have good infrastructure, where they see they have good streets, they have quality parks, okay? They have good schools. Where there's higher unemployment, you're addressing that unemployment. People who want to be entrepreneurs, they see people like them engaged in business and doing very well. And many of these businesses will turn around and hire some of the same people coming from these particular communities.
So on that note, several of the candidates have proposed community policing. Is that realistic?
Community policing is realistic, and we should have community policing. But the enemy of community policing is the lack of resources. Okay?
Always comes down to money, doesn't it?
Well, it comes down to money and management. For example, HPD, Houston Police budget. Their budget has soared from $700 million up to close to $1 billion, way over $900 million. Sometimes you can be too top-heavy on the administrative side, and you need to force those dollars down so that those 20 to 30,000 crimes that are not being investigated, you have the resources for that.
So transparency, looking at where the money's allocated and reallocating to maximize those funds.
Enhancing efficiency and making sure that those dollars get to where the need is most needed. And that is, we need more police officers on the street, we need more crimes investigated, you need community policing. But policing alone will not prevent a Ferguson or a Baltimore of these flashpoints. Communities, when they feel as though they are being overlooked, that you're not responding to them, it only takes one incident to create a flashpoint. So you have to get ahead of the game. They have to see a city that sees and hears them, that's in their communities. They need to see a mayor, for example, that recognizes them before a problem occurs, that's in there working for them. I think it's important for Latinos to see a mayor that's in their communities, that's responding to their needs, that they can talk to, that they can embrace, someone who's advocating and fighting for their children and for people who are not as fortunate. Same thing for African Americans, same thing for Asians. This is a diverse city, but diversity doesn't mean it's not without its tensions. Diversity works best when it's seamless, when it's as if it's one big family and everybody has an opportunity to be at the table. If you believe that you have an opportunity to be at the table, and you are at the table, and you are seen, and you're not at one end, but when people look up at the high echelons of authority in the city of Houston, and they see Hispanics, they see Asians, they see African Americans, they see whites, okay? When they're looking at the economic opportunities, and they see that they are a part of it and they are included, then they feel a part of. And I think you can lower the tensions and you can pull the city together. When the city comes together as a family, just like in your own home, when the family is healthy, regardless of what you're going through, you can face tomorrow. When the family is dysfunctional and there's tension, it only takes one spark and you have a problem. The city needs to be a healthy family. Doesn't mean you solve all the problems, but what it does mean is that you have leadership in the city that appreciates the diversity, respects the diversity, is inclusive of that diversity, and is done in a very real way. If you can achieve that, then I think you work to lessen and reduce tensions that could put us on some major television station on the front page of a newspaper, because the police can't solve it all. And in many cases, the police are responding to crisis situations in communities that are already overburdened.
Yes.
So to make it easy for law enforcement, you got to reduce the burden that the communities are experiencing. And in order to do that, you have to meet the needs of the people that are living within our city.
Okay. On that note, you talked
Yes.
about inclusion, diversity.
Yes.
Very controversial in Houston.
Yes.
Is HERO and the Equal Rights Ordinance. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I support it. I mean, the reality is this is a diverse city. Well, what does that mean? We only diverse because we say it, but we don't have it, but it's not reflected in our policies?
But what about people who say, well, of course it's included, and we don't need that policy? And then others say, well, wait a minute, most major cities have this particular ordinance, right? So there's two camps.
Well,
Talk to those two areas.
Are we better than we were 20 years ago? Yes. Are we where we need to be? No. We still have programs for disadvantaged businesses, the hubs.
Yes.
Okay? Should we not have those programs anymore? Have we achieved? Are we all at that where everything is fine and we don't need to try to provide any sort of programs of that kind? No. HERO is about discrimination, or saying we will not discriminate based on hiring, employment, contracting. What's wrong with that? Now, there are some people who want to focus on one piece of it, okay? But there are many different pieces. There are 13 different groups that HERO speaks to. Veterans, pregnant women, African Americans, Hispanic, Asian, that we are not going to discriminate based on race or identity. I am an African American. I don't want anyone discriminated against based on group affiliation. And there's nothing wrong for that policy to be expressed in paper, in a document. If we are not going to discriminate, and then I'm a lawyer, if we're not going to discriminate, then what's wrong with saying we're not going to discriminate? Okay? What's wrong with saying that? What I will say to the people in this city, if given the opportunity to be your mayor, the street with the infrastructure, the street that I will build, everyone will be entitled to ride on that street. Doesn't matter what your color is, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your sex or your gender or your orientation. Doesn't matter whether you're a sinner or a saint. Everyone will be entitled to ride on that street, and they should. It's a public street. Now, what somebody does with those people, when I get them to their destination, that's a different deal. But on the street as mayor that I will build, everyone in this city is entitled to ride on it. Now, there are some things people do I may not like. They can ride on my street. There are some things people do may not share my values. But on this public street, they're entitled to ride on this street. The point that I'm making is that on the city, if given the opportunity to be your mayor, that I will be the CEO, where I will be the mayor, everyone should be entitled to contracting opportunities, housing, employment opportunities, irrespective of your race, your sex, your origin, your orientation. If this city is diverse, and if we are proud of our diversity, then let that diversity be reflected in our policies. And I'm seeking to be a part of a city where we're looking to the future, not where we're trying to hold on to negative vestiges of our past. So I support it. I think this city is a great city. Everyone should be welcome to this city. I don't care what city you come from. I don't care what state you come from, what country you come from, what your orientation may be. This is a city, and the city that I grew up in, I would walk down Main Street in Travis and Milam, and if I look you in your eye, I would say hello and how you doing. Houstonians always greet people with a smile, and we have always been warm, and we've always been tolerant. I dread of the day when we decide to turn back in time and be something that we have never been. So I support HERO, and my point is let's move forward. But let's move forward together. Let's not discriminate against anybody based on group identity, because that's not who we are. And I think it's important for us collectively to stand up and say, this is our Houston. And especially to young people who are coming through the system, to people in junior high school, in high school, where you're dealing with a population that's seeking to find out who they are. Let's not send the wrong message to them. So, I support it. I hope Houstonians will support it. And let's make diversity a real, let's make it real, and let's not say one thing and then do another.
Very well.
You mentioned when you walk down the street and you
Yes.
smile and say, how you doing?
Yes.
That's my favorite thing about Houston. What is your favorite thing about Houston?
Look, my dad died of cancer when I was 13, okay?
Sorry.
My mom was a maid at the Rice Hotel for many years. And when my dad died, my mom literally had to raise 9 kids. She got us ready, and then she would catch the bus and go downtown, work at the Rice Hotel. When I got enough money at 13, 14, 15-year-old, coming from the north side, my trip, like a vacation, would be to catch the bus, go downtown, and walk up and down Main and Travis and Louisiana, and I would look at all the tall buildings. And I would say, one of these days, I want to be somewhere in one of those buildings. I didn't know what they were doing, but I was in awe of those buildings.
Yeah.
And when I got enough money, I would stop in at Woolworths
Yes, I remember Woolworths.
and get me a hamburger, fries, and a Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would, by myself, walk up and down Main, Travis, Louisiana, look up at the tall buildings, and I was just in awe. As a kid, 13, 14, 15, that's what motivated me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, catching the bus, going downtown, going to University of Houston Central Campus, I'm looking at these buildings. Working at Southwestern Bell, downtown the Capitol and Sanders Center, I'm looking at these buildings. When the law firm came to my law school and was interviewing me, and I asked them, I didn't ask how much they were paying. This was Fulbright and Jaworski. I said, where are you located? They said, in the Bank of the Southwest building downtown. I said, you got me. And that is why for the last 32 years, the law firm where I am a partner has been downtown for
Yes.
32 years.
And you've got an incredible view out of your offices.
Right.
A beautiful view of Houston.
Thank you. And so, but the downtown, the city, was built by people who dream big
That's right.
and made big things happen. That's what motivated me. Well, those are the same things that are driving me for some other kid who's yet to come through. I think we have to build a city that not only deals with financial matters and potholes and infrastructure, but beyond that, for many of our children from all different walks of life, we have to build a city that inspires them. And so, yeah.
Well, thank you. So before we close the
Yeah.
program, an opportunity for you to talk to our audience and let them know a little bit more, something specific that you want them to take away with.
Well, it's I've been blessed. I've been blessed. I still live in the same neighborhood, so to speak, where I was born and reared. I've had the luxury of representing that area in the legislature for 26 years. But it's an area that's still in need of a lot of work. You're not going to find the major grocery stores there. It's still in transition. But what I said to many people, this is an area that needs our help the most. And this is where I'm going to lay down my anchor, and I'm going to work and stay in this community for us all to do better, okay? Because quite frankly, it may not have the best of everything, but it had the essential elements that was good enough to get me where I am. And I think it's important it's important to be able to say to other kids that are coming through, hey, I grew up right here, okay? I still live here. My financial situation has changed, but I'm still here. And just like I have been able to do it, so can you. I love this city. I'm still very bullish on this city. I hope that people will take a look at my record and will listen carefully to what I have to offer. But no one person can do it alone. You know, I'm seeking to be the mayor of the city of Houston, the CEO. But I can't do it by myself. It's going to take all of us working together. I don't want to see a Republican or a Democrat, because quite frankly, there's no Republican or Democratic pothole. I'm not Hispanic, I'm not Latino, okay? But I believe my DNA is good. What I can say to you is that the good book says there's no, God has no respect of persons. Neither do I. If the city under my leadership works good for you and for a Houston family, then the city of Houston will work good for me. I just want to work with the people in this city to build the best city that one can imagine. And I want a city where people across the globe will look and say, that's where I want to be. And that's inclusive of everyone. I don't want to discriminate against anyone. And I don't want anyone to feel bad because of who they are. I want you to be who you are and to walk tall in the city of Houston. The only thing that I ask is that when you walk past someone, do it the Houston way. Put the smile on your face and say, how you doing?
Thank you so much, Sylvester Turner. Thank you for joining us. And on behalf of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and CBS Radio, we thank you for joining us.